Rome debased its denarius. Spain flooded Europe with stolen gold. Weimar Germany printed marks until they became wallpaper. Every single empire that tried to print its way to prosperity didn't just decline, they collapsed. Violently. Completely. And right now, the United States has printed more money in the last 4 years than in its entire previous history. The pattern is universal, and America is following it. But here's what makes this worse. The people running the system know the history. They've studied these collapses. They teach them in economics courses. And they keep printing. Why? Because the pain of stopping is immediate and the pain of collapse is someone else's problem. Today, we're going to trace this pattern from ancient Rome to modern Washington. You'll see the same playbook repeat across 2,000 years. Different currencies, different empires, same ending. Rome's slow death. In 211 AD, the Roman denarius contained 95% pure silver, a soldier's wages, a merchant's trust, the foundation of the greatest empire the world had ever seen. By 270 AD, that same coin contained just 5% silver. The rest, copper with a thin silver wash that rubbed off in your hands. What happened? Rome got expensive. Wars on every frontier. Bread and circuses to keep the masses quiet. An empire that sprawled from Britain to Mesopotamia doesn't run on good intentions. It runs on money. And when the money ran out, emperor after emperor made the same choice. The easiest path to destruction is the slow erosion of value. They didn't announce they were robbing the people. They simply made the coins lighter, added more copper, pretended nothing had changed. But the merchants noticed, the soldiers noticed, and the barbarians at the gates noticed. Prices didn't rise because goods became scarce. Prices rose because the money became worthless. A pound of bread that cost 2 denarii under Marcus Aurelius cost 200 under Diocletian. This wasn't inflation. This was theft. Government theft disguised as monetary policy. And the Romans had a word for what came next. They called it the crisis of the 3rd century. We might call it something else soon. Spanish gold trap. Spain didn't print money. Spain did something even dumber. They found real gold. Mountains of it. Ships full of silver from Potosi. Treasure fleets crossing the Atlantic every year. By 1600, Spain controlled more precious metal than any empire in history. They should have become unstoppable. Instead, they became bankrupt. 4 times. The problem wasn't finding wealth. The problem was thinking wealth was the same as productivity. Gold poured in, prices doubled, then tripled. Spanish craftsmen couldn't compete with cheaper imports. Why manufacture when you can just buy? The gold that should have built an industrial empire instead bought luxury goods from rivals. Easy money destroyed ambition. Sound familiar? A nation that imports everything and produces nothing. An economy built on financial manipulation rather than actual creation. If you're starting to see the pattern here, hit like and subscribe to keep exposing what they hide, because what comes next connects all the dots. Spain's treasure galleons were the 16th century equivalent of the Federal Reserve's printing press. Fake prosperity that masked real decline. The Dutch understood this. The English understood this. They let Spain drown in its own gold while they built factories and ships, and within a century, the sun set on the Spanish Empire, not with a dramatic battle, but with a slow suffocation of its own making. Weimar's warning, November 1923. A loaf of bread in Berlin costs 200 billion marks. Workers are paid twice a day because their morning wages are worthless by afternoon. Children play with stacks of currency because it's cheaper than buying toys. Hyperinflation. Germany didn't stumble into this nightmare. They walked in with their eyes open. After World War I, the Weimar government faced impossible reparations. The Allies wanted payment in gold marks. Germany didn't have gold marks, so they printed paper marks. Then they printed more. Then they couldn't print fast enough. At the peak, the Reichsbank employed 30 paper mills and 2,000 printing presses running 24 hours a day. Paper money eventually returns to its intrinsic value, 0. The middle class was annihilated. Lifetime savings became worthless overnight. A generation that had worked and sacrificed and saved discovered that their government had stolen everything without firing a shot. And in that chaos, in that desperation, in that betrayal, something dark took root. The Nazis didn't rise because Germans were evil. They rose because Germans were desperate, because the people who destroyed their currency faced no consequences, because the establishment that betrayed them offered no solutions. Weimar's hyperinflation didn't just destroy money, it destroyed faith in institutions. And when faith dies, monsters fill the void. The Fed's game. The Federal Reserve isn't federal. It has no reserves. And since 1913, it has transferred more wealth from ordinary Americans to financial institutions than any mechanism in history. They don't print money, they create it from nothing. Here's how the game works. The Fed creates dollars with a keystroke, not backed by gold, not backed by production, backed by nothing but the government's promise to tax you later. These dollars flow first to banks and connected institutions. They buy assets, stocks, real estate, bonds. By the time these dollars reach your paycheck, prices have already risen. You're not getting richer. You're running on a treadmill that speeds up every year. In 1971, Nixon severed the last connection between the dollar and gold. Since then, the dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power. That's not inflation, that's theft. But here's what really matters. The Fed printed $3 trillion in 2008, then $4 trillion more by 2014. Then another $4 trillion in 2020. 1. Every crisis justifies more printing. 2. Every printing creates the next crisis. 3. Every bailout goes to the same people. The pattern isn't hidden. They just count on you not paying attention. Who benefits? Follow the money. It's the oldest rule in understanding power. When the Fed printed trillions in 2020, where did it go? Not to your small business, not to your savings account, not to the nurses working double shifts in overcrowded hospitals. It went to asset prices. The stock market hit all-time highs while 40 million Americans filed for unemployment. Housing prices exploded, while eviction moratoriums barely held back a wave of foreclosures. Billionaire wealth increased by $2 trillion in a year when average workers lost income. The central bank is the most corrupt institution ever devised. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is monetary policy functioning exactly as designed. New money always benefits whoever gets it first, and you're never first. The Cantillon effect describes this precisely. Named after an 18th century economist who noticed that when the king debased the currency, the people closest to the king got rich while everyone else got poor. Same game, different century. Today the king is the Federal Reserve, and the people closest to the throne are the primary dealers, the connected banks, the institutional investors with direct access to cheap money. You pay for their privilege through rising prices on everything you need to survive. The debt trap. $34 trillion. That's the current U.S. national debt. A number so large it's meaningless without context. So let's add context. The United States now pays more in interest on its debt than it spends on national defense. Unsustainable. Every year, hundreds of billions of dollars flow from taxpayers to bondholders. Money that builds no bridges, educates no children, defends no borders. Just interest payments on yesterday's spending. And here's the trap they never explain. When debt gets this large, the government has only 3 options. 1. Default and destroy the global financial system. 2. Cut spending and face political suicide. 3. Print more money and inflate the debt away. Which do you think they'll choose? Inflation isn't a bug in this system. Inflation is the feature. It's the hidden tax that allows politicians to spend money they don't have without ever voting for a tax increase. The cruelest tax is the one you never voted for. Your wages rise 5% while prices rise 8%. You're going backward, but the numbers look like progress. This is how empires rob their citizens. Not with soldiers in the streets, but with balance sheets no one reads. Reserve status. The U.S. dollar has one superpower no other currency possesses. Every country needs it. Oil is priced in dollars. Global trade settles in dollars. Central banks hold trillions in dollar reserves. This is the privilege that allows America to print money without immediate consequences. The exorbitant privilege that lets America live beyond its means. But privileges can be revoked. China and Russia are settling trades in yuan and rubles. Saudi Arabia is entertaining yuan-priced oil contracts. BRICS nations are discussing alternative payment systems. The exit has begun. None of this happens overnight. Reserve currencies don't collapse like stock prices. They erode like coastlines. The British pound was the world's reserve currency for over a century. Its decline took decades, accelerated by 2 world wars and unsustainable debt. Sound familiar? A great empire, like a great cake, is most easily diminished at the edges. When foreign nations stop needing dollars, they stop buying American debt. When they stop buying American debt, interest rates rise. When interest rates rise on $34 trillion of debt, the math becomes catastrophic. This isn't doomsaying. This is arithmetic. And arithmetic doesn't care about political preferences. The pattern. Every empire follows the same arc. It's so consistent you could set your watch by it if you measured time in centuries. First, sound money builds trust. Trade flourishes. Innovation accelerates. The empire expands because it can afford to. Then, ambition outpaces resources. Wars cost more than they return. Citizens demand more than taxes provide. The spending promises exceed the revenue reality. Next comes the fatal choice. Do we disappoint the people or debase the currency? Every empire chooses debasement, every single one, because disappointing people is immediate and debasement is gradual. The decline accelerates. Inflation erodes savings. The middle class fractures. Trust in institutions collapses. By the time the average citizen understands what's happening, it's too late. Rome fell, Spain fell, Britain fell. Each believed they were exceptional. Each had reasons why the rules didn't apply to them. Each discovered that mathematics is universal and hubris is fatal. The question isn't whether America will follow this pattern. The question is where we are on the timeline. And looking at 34 trillion in debt, continuous money printing, and accelerating global de-dollarization, the answer should concern everyone. What comes next? History doesn't repeat exactly. It rhymes. So what rhymes with our current situation? Japan's lost decades offer one possibility: stagnation, a slow decline where each generation is slightly worse off than the last. No dramatic collapse, just perpetual mediocrity. That's the optimistic scenario. The best case is 30 years of managed decline. The pessimistic scenarios are darker. A currency crisis that makes 2008 look minor. Social unrest when promised pensions evaporate. Political extremism rising from economic desperation. We've seen this movie before. Weimar, Argentina, Zimbabwe, Venezuela. Each thought they could print their way to prosperity. Each discovered that reality has no respect for wishful thinking. 1. Savings lose purchasing power every 2. Asset prices become untenable for workers. 3. Trust in institutions continues eroding. 4. Political solutions become more extreme. But here's what they don't want you to understand. The people who benefit from this system know exactly what they are doing. They're not stupid. They're protected. Their wealth is in hard assets, foreign holdings, and inflation-resistant investments. The question is whether you're protected too. Your move. So what do you do with this knowledge? First, understand that awareness is not paranoia. Recognizing patterns that have destroyed every empire in history isn't doomsaying. It's prudence. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Second, recognize that governments will always choose the easy path. They will print. They will inflate. They will transfer wealth from savers to debtors because most citizens don't understand monetary policy, and most politicians don't care about anything beyond the next election. Third, think about what holds value when currencies fail. Skills, assets, community knowledge. The Romans who survived the collapse weren't the ones holding coins. They were the ones with land, trades, and trusted networks. The Weimar Germans who preserved their wealth weren't the ones with savings accounts. They were the ones who understood what was happening and acted accordingly. Prepare. This isn't about buying gold or burying cash in your backyard. It's about understanding that the rules are being rewritten and most people won't notice until it's too late. You noticed. That's the first step. What you do next determines whether you're a victim of history or a student of it. Rome, Spain, Weimar, Britain. The pattern is carved into history with the bones of collapsed empires. Every one of them believed they were different. Every one of them believed the rules of economics had been suspended for their benefit. Every one of them was wrong. Empires are not maintained by timidity, but empires are also not maintained by printing presses. The United States has printed more money in the last 4 years than Rome debased in 4 centuries. We've accumulated more debt than Spain plundered in 200 years of conquest. We're following Weimar's playbook while teaching Weimar in history classes. The arrogance is breathtaking. The consequences will be too. Wake up, pay attention. Your government won't protect you from this, they're causing it. Your financial advisor won't warn you, they profit from it. The media won't explain it. They're owned by the people who benefit from it. Only you can protect yourself. Only you can learn the patterns. Only you can act while there's still time. If you made it this far, comment denarius debased if you see the pattern now. Every government lies. The question is whether you'll keep believing them. The truth is out there. You just have to follow the money. Subscribe if you want to keep digging.